Man United now, are they losing out? Because they've been pretty quiet, haven't they, on the transfer front recently? We know they want a left-back and they're keen on Lewis Hall. Mark, will they get Lewis Hall, though?
I don't think this is a deal that will happen this summer. Don't quote me on this because you can be very dangerously wrong in a transfer window. We know that. You know, first and foremost, Newcastle's stance is not for sale. This is a player we absolutely want to keep and we want to continue our relationship and our journey with him. And we believe he's a key part of our squad moving forward, particularly for the new boss, Matthias Eisler. They've already sold best part of £250 million worth of talent. 3 key first-team players have left St James's Park. Do they want to lose a fourth? Absolutely not. He has a number of years left on his contract. And as we've seen, Manchester United have had perhaps a frustrating window. He is a player on their radar. He is a player that Michael Carrick likes. But there was a significant investment from Newcastle to get him. To sell him, it would have to be a price that they absolutely could not afford to turn down, which I'm guessing would be 75, 80 million. Will Manchester United get to that point? I don't think so. But the world record for a left-back is 62.5 million. I think it would have to be a deal that smashes that for it to happen, and I don't see it happening in this summer's window.
But Mark, even if they went for that, Newcastle fans would not stomach another of their star players going, surely.
No, they wouldn't. They'd be upset, they'd be frustrated, they'd be gutted. But, you know, they lose Bruno Guimaraes, they lose Alexander Isak, they lose, you know...
Sandro Tonali, Anthony Gordon. Surely not another one.
Guess what? Life goes on, you know?
Yeah, well, life might go on in the Championship if you do that.
That is a risk, of course. They have young, exciting, promising players coming to that club. And I think if you spoke to any Newcastle fan, or any football fan really, and said, this player doesn't want to play for you, what do you think? Well, if he doesn't want to play for us, get rid of him. I'd rather have someone that might not have the ability, but he's got the heart and the passion and the determination, because that means more than quality. And that's what they want. They just want to see players on that pitch that give everything in black and white.
So, James, United may or may not get Lewis Hall, but should left-back be a priority for them?
I think when you look at last season, it's incredible to think that Luke Shaw started all 38 Premier League matches, considering some of the injury issues he's had over the course of the last few seasons. And it worked for Manchester United last season because they went out so early in the cup competitions. They played 40 matches last season. This year, they're back in the Champions League, a bigger version of the Champions League. They're going to need different options at left-back. Luke Shaw, 31 years of age. Can he play all 38 matches? It seems unlikely. United could have a 60-game season if all goes their way in different cup competitions. Now, we know they are looking for a left-sided player, somewhat complicated by the Marcus Rashford situation because he occupies that left-hand side of the pitch. If he doesn't go anywhere, then that affects them because his wages are so high, they're not getting a transfer fee for him as well. Patrick Dorgu is a player who was really impressed over the course of the last season and looks like he's going to play as a left-sided forward. Right now, it looks like the options Manchester United have at left-back, if Luke Shaw wasn't there, would be a Diego Dalot playing on the left-hand side on his wrong foot, which always looks quite uncomfortable. Or you've got Mazraoui, who actually is always impressed for United in different positions. But United right now are working out what to prioritise in this transfer window. Is it a third midfielder? They've signed 2 already, not the 2 names most Manchester United fans will be looking for, or they put that money into signing a left-sided player, because actually across the pitch they look quite good. They look quite well set. Mason Mount has really impressed in pre-season. I know United fans don't really want to hear this because they want new players in the door, but he really has impressed in a deeper role, which actually means if United do progress in Europe and they have different sides in each competition, they do have Kobbie Mainoo there, Mason Mount, and the 2 new players, Tielemans and Santos. So actually, based on that, they're well stocked. Whether they're stocked with the level of player that Manchester United think can guide them back into the Champions League qualification next season and deepen the competition in the Champions League this season, I'm not so sure. It's not the names they were looking for, but United want to be sensible. They've learnt lessons from the previous ownership. Don't overpay for players. The deals they've done are sensible, albeit not hugely exciting, you'd have to say.
But if I was a Manchester United fan, Mark, and you know I'm not, should I be concerned?
Great point. Great question. And I think if you spoke to most Manchester United fans, as James has touched upon there, they'd be a little bit frustrated. The job Michael Carrick did to get them into the Champions League was phenomenal. They had their season with the least amount of games, so they could really focus on their league form and now they've got the rewards. I think what you're seeing now is maybe a slight hangover from not having Champions League football for a couple of years, and they've not got that ability to spend big like perhaps they have done in the past. And also they've learned from the past. And we saw last summer, over £3 billion was spent by Premier League sides. How much of that was actually good business? Sometimes you just have to bide your time, be patient, and wait for the right players to come along. Because I bet you now there are a number of Premier League sides given the option to sign the players they sign, or to perhaps just sit back and keep the money in the purse, they would say, actually, the right thing to do in that moment was to not get that player. We should have held our money back and waited for the right one. And I think Manchester United are perhaps in that situation. We've still got 3 weeks to go. They've got Champions League football. They'll want to back Michael Carrick. They'll want to keep this momentum going. So I don't think that they won't be players between now and September the 1st. But you're right to say it has been frustrating.
Yeah, if they do get another player in midfield, who give us an idea of the sort of player they'd look at?
There's a long shortlist. We know some players are further up the list than others. Manu Kone from Roma was an option seen as potentially less expensive than a deal for Carlos Baleba. Baleba's actually out for the start of this season, which you would think rules out that transfer when it comes to Manchester United looking to sign him from Brighton. Brighton, very difficult to do business with. They'll have a top valuation for him. They won't let him go on the cheap. Aurelien Tchouaméni from Real Madrid. I think most Manchester United fans would see him as their top target in this transfer window. We understand he's close to signing a new contract at Real Madrid. That's all been agreed. But this Rodri situation could potentially have a knock-on effect. If Rodri was to go to Barcelona rather than Real Madrid, it would seem more likely that Tchouaméni would be staying at Real Madrid. But if Real Madrid were able to get Rodri, then there may be room for a departure in midfield. Maybe Camavinga, who's a player of interest to Manchester United, but Tchouaméni would be the one, I think, that really would get United fans excited. But we're a long way away from that happening. But there has been a different stance from United in the last 3 transfer windows. They were very smart signing Cunha. That was a release clause they triggered. They did the same with Tielemans as well. They spent weeks and weeks and weeks arguing, haggling with Brentford to get the best deal for Bryan Mbeumo. They're desperate to be seen to not overpay for players, which is why they have been sensible in this transfer window, which has been frustrating for United fans.
Yeah, interesting. All need signings, no doubt about that. So are they about to spend big on the PSG winger, Bradley Barcola? Mark, what can you tell us?
Yeah, a little bit of information into us at Sky Sports News over the last couple of hours with regards to this. We know that Liverpool fans perhaps a little bit frustrated or disappointed that they haven't been active so far in the window, but there has been a small step forward because we know that they've held preliminary talks with PSG over a potential deal for Bradley Barcola. He is potentially the marquee signing that Liverpool fans are looking for, certainly one of many big signings over the course of this summer. They need to give Andoni Iraola all the tools they possibly can to compete in the Premier League and on the Champions League front. Those talks have not progressed to any formal offer. However, we understand there is a big gap in valuation between what PSG want, which we believe to be 145 million euros, and what Liverpool are willing to pay. Now, we are, 3 and a bit weeks away from deadline day. So there's plenty of time for posturing. There's plenty of time for hard ball. There's plenty of time for clubs to say, well, we're not going to pay that and we'll just walk away, no problem at all. This time next week, this time in 2 weeks, this time in 3 weeks, the stance will change. We know that PSG have signed Akliouche, so they've got a player in already. We know that Bradley Barcola has had limited game time and the player has been frustrated at not playing as much as he would like, particularly in key games in the Champions League and the Champions League final, where he's not finding himself in that starting 11. So therefore, you've got a player that's open and has a desire to go to Liverpool. PSG, in theory, wants to try and cash in, and this would be a huge amount of money for someone that's not in their starting 11. And we know that Liverpool are looking to strengthen, and they need to strengthen out wide. So it all fits. It says this is potentially going to happen, but right now there's a massive gap in valuation, so there's no progressive talks.
James, Mark says there's plenty of time until deadline day, but actually, don't Liverpool need to get on with this if they're going to do it?
It feels that way, and the fans are very concerned because it does look like they're short in a number of areas of the pitch. Defence looks like an area right now where you're wondering who is going to partner Virgil van Dijk in that first game of the season. He's not returned yet from from his pre-season break following the World Cup, but clearly there is a need for a marquee signing. on the flanks. Mohamed Salah has gone, and when you look at their options going into this season, things will look different when Hugo Ekitike returns from injury. But right now, you've got Victor Munoz, 23 years of age. What's he going to be like in his first season in the Premier League? Rayo Ngamoa, huge potential. First full season where he's going to get proper outings. Cody Gakpo, and you could add Federico Chiesa to that list, but that does not look like a side who are going to be challenging for the title. Last season, they were red-hot favourites to defend their crown. This season, things look very different, and the caveat is they made a late choice to dispense with Arne Slot, and that would have affected their transfer plans as well. Bring in Andoni Iraola, different style of play, but it does feel like they need to do something, and whether it means they potentially need to pay slightly above what they want to get a player in the door now, because time is ticking, just over 2 weeks until Andoni Iraola's first game in charge away at Newcastle.
I think Liverpool's stance in the transfer window, they will always only pay the money that they are comfortable with. And if they have to walk away from a deal, Yan Diomande, for example, they were interested in the player, but the figure that they were being quoted was perhaps higher than they were comfortable with. And then, of course, as soon as Real Madrid turn up at the negotiations table, they know that that's where the player wants to go.
Okay.
So I think they will always say, we will pay what's right for the club, we will do what's right for the club, we want to strengthen, but it has to be financially sound for us.
All right, but let me throw this into the mix then. With Vinicius Junior staying at Real Madrid and not going to Arsenal,
Yep.
could Arsenal suddenly have an interest in Barcola? Hence, Liverpool, if they want him, get on with it.
Well, this is what we love, and we've seen it so much, haven't we? You know, Newcastle were interested in Victor Munoz, Liverpool steal in and get him at the last moment. And, you know, we've seen a lot of hijacks, we've seen a lot of players that you think are headed one way and suddenly they end up going somewhere else. And when you dither and dally and you don't get the deal done and you don't get it signed up and sorted, then there is always a huge risk. And we've seen it before in transfer windows where players have a medical with a club and then they end up going and signing for someone else. So that kind of thing still goes on, and it is possible. My information is that Barcola has indicated that he would desire playing for Liverpool. That would be a move that he would be open to. So that is one of the positive things. However, do Arsenal have the money to go and get Bradley Barcola? Do they have that cash, which is going to be, let's be honest, it's going to be around £120 million, all in. It might be 100 plus 20, it might be 110 plus 10. It's going to be that kind of fee that I think will get the deal done, despite PSG's stance of 145 million euros. I think that will soften day by day as we get closer to deadline day. So you are right, you're absolutely spot on with what you say. I think there is very few teams in world football that can get to the type of money that Liverpool and Arsenal's Premier League sides can get to for a player of this calibre, and there are very few sides that Bradley Barcola would want to go and play for. I'm intrigued by what happens. We know that the Vinicius Junior deal was always going to be an ambitious one for Arsenal. You know, the figures at play were huge figures from the outset, and it would have involved him taking a massive pay cut, so it always looked like it was never going to quite happen. This is a slightly different scenario, but let's wait and see, because you're right to point it out. You dither, you lose out.
Exactly.
You don't want to lose out this summer.
All right, let's talk